Summer, 1942. Somewhere between Whitehorse and the Alaska border. A Caterpillar. D8 tractor stops moving forward. The operator guns the throttle. The tracks spin, but the machine does not move. Instead, it begins to sink, slowly. The engine vibration is liquefying the ground beneath 30,000 pounds of steel. Army engineer Chester Russell watched it happen from Kingsburg, California, and he said it plainly. If you left a tractor running in muskeg, the vibration alone would bury it. The crew could not pull it out. They could not shut it down fast enough. So they did the only thing the Army would let them do. They cut trees, laid them flat, and built the road directly over the top of it. That bulldozer is still down there. And it was not the only one. 4 months earlier, the United States had a problem that no amount of equipment could solve fast enough. On December 7, 1941, Japan hit Pearl Harbor. By June 1942, Japanese bombers struck Dutch Harbor in Alaska, and troops invaded 2 American islands, Kiska and Attu. It was the first foreign occupation of American soil since the War of 1812. And there was no road connecting the lower 48 states to Alaska. Not a single mile. President Roosevelt authorized construction on February 11, 1942. The first trainload of soldiers arrived in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, just 16 days later. The town had a population of 600. It swelled to 10,000 overnight. Construction began at 1:30 in the morning on March 9, 1942, in temperatures of -35 degrees Celsius. The man in charge was Brigadier General William Hogue, a 48-year-old West Pointer who had bridged the Meuse River under fire in World War I. He thought he had seen the worst terrain on Earth. He was wrong. The worst terrain was underneath him. Beneath a thin layer of moss and frozen vegetation lay permafrost that had been solid for 10,000 years. The moment a bulldozer blade scraped that moss away, the surface temperature rose by roughly 3 degrees Fahrenheit. That was all it took. The ice inside the ground melted into thick black muck, and a Caterpillar D8 with a Laplant chote blade would begin to disappear. The deeper pools of muskeg, from the Cree language meaning low-lying marsh, ranged from small bogs to swamps several miles long and more than 25 feet deep. The sphagnum moss that formed muskeg could hold 15 to 30 times its own weight in water. From the surface, it looked like solid ground. It was not. General Hogue identified permafrost as the worst obstacle on the entire project. Standard road building procedure, clear the ground, grade it flat, and compact it, was exactly wrong with permafrost. We had to do the reverse. Figuring that out cost them 6 weeks of halted construction on the northern section. If you want to see how 11,000 soldiers and 5,000 pieces of heavy equipment fought ground that swallowed machines whole, hit like and subscribe. The first thing they tried was brute force. Bulldoze the surface, grade the road, move on. It failed within days. The cleared ground thawed, and freshly built road sections collapsed into mud. So the engineers switched to hand-cutting trees to preserve the insulating vegetation layer, then pioneered corduroy road construction. They felled trees, laid them perpendicular to the road, covered them with brush and earth, and floated the road across the muskeg like a raft on soup. Over 100 miles of highway were corduroyed. Some sections required logs stacked 15 feet deep just to reach stable ground. Construction pace dropped from 8 miles per day to roughly 1 mile per day. Army engineer Alden Hacker described the work. Laying down corduroy takes an enormous amount of labor, because it is all done by hand. You cut the trees down, carry them over, place them, and go back for more. But here is the detail that nobody talks about. The regiment with the most experience operating heavy machinery was the 95th Engineer Regiment. They were denied bulldozers. no powered equipment at all. That equipment went to the all-white 35th Regiment. The 95th was one of 4 black regiments on the project, 3,695 soldiers in total, roughly a third of the entire workforce. They came from Louisiana, Mississippi, and the Carolinas. They had never experienced temperatures below freezing, let alone minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and they were ordered to build with picks, shovels, axes, and hand saws. The segregation was total. Black and white camps were strictly separated. On the train ride north, officers instructed the black soldiers to keep their window blinds drawn so civilians could not see them passing through. In Carcross, Yukon, a local schoolgirl named Millie Jones remembered that the soldiers could not come into the hotel or even to the front door. The 93rd Regiment, after completing their road section, was ordered to convoy 335 miles north to build barracks for white engineers. They lived in canvas tents at 40 to 60 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Fires in barrel stoves could not even melt the frost off the canvas walls. This is the kind of story that disappears if nobody watches it. Like and subscribe. But those same soldiers built some of the most impressive sections of the entire highway. In June 1942, Company A of the 95th Regiment, 166 black soldiers, bet their month's pay they could build the 300-foot Sekani Chief River Bridge in 4 days. They completed it in 84 hours. Men waded chest deep in freezing glacial water, sang work chanties from the deep south, and worked through the night using truck headlights. That bridge stood longer than any other built that year. The worst single disaster happened at Charlie Lake near Fort St. John on May 14, 1942. 17 soldiers of the 341st Engineer Regiment loaded onto a pontoon barge with a D4 Caterpillar and a weapons carrier to cross the partly frozen lake. A gas line leaked. The barge turned sideways, waves flooded the canvas pontoons, and the whole thing capsized. A Swedish trapper named Gustav Hedin saw black dots bobbing in the water from his cabin a mile away. He thought they were ducks. When he realized they were men, he rowed his 14-foot homemade boat to the scene and made 3 trips. He pulled 5 soldiers from the water. 12 drowned. Their bodies were not all recovered until June 9th. The mosquitoes were arguably worse than the permafrost. General Hogue said he would raise his mosquito net, and by the time he got food on the spoon up to his mouth, it would be covered with mosquitoes. He was eating mosquitoes half the time. Temperature extremes spanned 160 degrees Fahrenheit, from minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit in winter to 90 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Repair crews built fires under frozen machinery and fed the flames with oil just to thaw the engines. Steel dozer blades became so brittle in the cold that they cracked on impact with rock or frozen ground. On October 25, 1942, Corporal Refines Sims Jr. of the 97th Engineers was pushing his bulldozer through dense spruce near Beaver Creek when he saw trees falling toward him from the wrong direction. He slammed into reverse. A second bulldozer crashed through the brush from the opposite side, operated by Private Alfred Jalufka of the 18th Engineers, his face bleeding from branch scratches. The 2 men had just built 1,700 miles of effluor from opposite ends. They were standing in the last gap. A photographer posed them for a handshake, a black man and a white man photographed as equals in 1942. That photograph mattered. 84 years later, the permafrost is still winning. The 100-mile stretch from Burwash Landing to Coydern became virtually impassable less than 1 year after construction because the destroyed vegetation layer could no longer protect the frozen ground beneath. The Yukon government has since installed experimental thermosiphons, tubes that allow heat to escape the ground, along a pilot section near Beaver Creek. That same corridor is currently undergoing a $43 million restoration. At Soldiers Summit near Kluane Lake, visitors today can see 4 different versions of the Alaska Highway visible at the same time. The original 1942 Tote Road, the Military Highway, the rerouted highway along the lake, and the 2008 Shockwalk Project Highway. 84 years of engineering, 4 roads stacked on top of each other, and the permafrost still moves beneath all of them. At historic mile 300 in British Columbia, a Canadian mechanic named Marl Brown spent over 30 years salvaging abandoned wartime vehicles from the roadside. His collection became the Fort Nelson Heritage Museum, which includes a wartime Caterpillar D6 bulldozer pulled from the wilderness. It is the closest thing to a verified equipment graveyard from the Alaska Highway Project. The project cost $138 million in 1942, roughly $2.1 billion today. It was the most expensive American construction project of World War II. The finished Pioneer Road required 133 major bridges and 8,000 culverts. In a bitter irony, 99% of wartime supplies to Alaska were ultimately shipped by sea. The highway proved far less essential than anyone had believed. But here is what stings the most. The official 759-page U.S. Army history of the Alaska Highway covers the contributions of 3,695 black soldiers in a single paragraph. Film crews followed white regiments. Photographers ignored black soldiers. The National Archives contains only a few dozen photos of black troops among hundreds. It took 75 years for recognition to begin. In 2017, the state of Alaska brought 96-year-old Private Leonard Larkins of the 93rd Engineers back to Delta Junction for the anniversary. He was a 21-year-old sugarcane cutter from Louisiana, earning $5 per ton when he enlisted. Governor Bill Walker handed him the key to the city and signed a bill establishing October 25 as African-American soldiers' contribution to building the Alaska Highway Day. Larkins said 2 words: "It is way past time." The Gerstle River Bridge near Delta Junction was renamed the Black Veterans Memorial Bridge in 1993. It is currently being replaced. 2 of the 9 original trestles will be preserved as a permanent memorial, with the new bridge expected by 2031. We drove 1,700 miles of road over ground that eats machines. We built it in 8 months, through mosquitoes that killed horses, through cold that cracked steel, through muskeg that swallowed caterpillars whole. And we built a third of it with hand tools, because the Army would not give black soldiers the equipment they had been trained to operate. Somewhere under that road, those bulldozers are still there. Like and subscribe if you want more stories like this. And tell us in the comments, have you ever driven the Alaska Highway yourself?